Hello everyone. Today we will start our second chapter of PS named India's Foreign Policy. If you remember, in first chapter we had discussed about the foreign policy. So in this chapter we will learn about the details of the foreign policy and why foreign policy is important and what are the important aspects or the significance of the foreign policy and how does the foreign policy affects our country's growth or development. Okay, basically foreign policy is a kind of system from which we collaborate with the different countries. देखो विद इन कंट्री हम लोग अपने रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन तो फॉलो करते ही हैं, बट व्हेन वी हैव एनी काइंड ऑफ एग्रीमेंट और एनी काइंड ऑफ प्रोजेक्ट with different countries, so we need to follow their rules and regulation also. They have a certain kinds of demand, they have a certain kinds of what we say procedure, so that needs to be followed by both the countries. For that, foreign policy is very much important, and moreover we always want that our country should be in a better position. So if you want your country in a better position, then you should have a better foreign policy. Very simple. So in this chapter we will see what are the steps taken by the government to make a perfect foreign policy. Okay, clear? What we are going to learn in this chapter, we have got introduced to the international system. In first chapter we learned about the international system, self-sufficiency, interdependence, and its nature in the Cold War in the last century and its effect. And also we had learned about the Cold War in the first chapter, and we also seen after the end of Cold War, after the 1990, the situation of the world became changed, right? Globalization arises. We shall now get introduced to other related issues. Thus we shall learn about the meaning of foreign policy, factors that impact on it. What are factors? Factor and reason that impact means effect on it, and the nature of India's foreign policy. And what is the first, we will look after the foreign policy. What is the common procedure for the foreign policy, not only in India, all over the world. Then after we will talk about the India's foreign policy. So let's begin with the foreign policy. Just take a basic knowledge of the foreign policy. Meaning and importance. What is the meaning of foreign policy and what is the importance of foreign policy? All country are members of the international system. As we all know, there are several organizations that work on the international level, like United Nations. United Nations is the world's largest organization, and today all the countries of the world are the member of such organization. So they need to collaborate with each other, they need to work with each other, they need to give support to each other. It is a kind of give and take relation. We have already studied that none of these countries completely self-reliant. What is self-reliant? Self-reliant means self-dependent. So we already came to know that none of the countries self-reliant. Even the countries are big, small, rich, poor, developed, underdeveloped, they are interdependent on each other for different things, right? And hence there is a mutual interdependence in the international system, and that's why there is a mutual interdependence. What is mutual? Between them or between us. So different countries need to give support to a different country, and they also take support from different country. So it goes on. Only this interdependence should not be benefit of a few countries. And while planning for such kind of dependency, there should be not any kind of benefit planning for one countries. There should be an equal distribution of resources also, right? Each country has to decide, efforts needs to be made to ensure that it benefit every nation. So efforts should be prepared in such a way that every nation should get the proper kind of benefit. अगर आप सिर्फ अपने बेनिफिट के बारे में सोचोगे तो दूसरी कंट्री आपसे कोलैबोरेट करेगी? नहीं करेगी ना. फिर वो आपके साथ में कोई बिजनेस है, कोई ट्रेड में आपको सपोर्ट नहीं करेगी. सो एक इक्वल डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन होना चाहिए, जो भी रिसोर्सेस हो, पैसे हो, मनी हो, फंड्स हो, तो दैट शुड बी सम काइंड ऑफ इक्वालिटी. Each country has to decide the nation with which it should be friendly, in which bloc it should participate, or what position it should take in international relation. So every country should plan their by own. सबको अपनी प्लानिंग करनी है. Which country they should have a friendly relation, which bloc they should join. Bloc means a group or a kind of organization, and they will plan on their own way. Even a small country or big country, none of has the pressure. Such decisions should be made thoughtfully. The theoretical framework in which such decisions are taken is called foreign policy. And the theoretical means the theory work, the decisions, the planning does in this framework. Framework is structure. So it is called the foreign policy. So these are the basic thing. For example, our country, we had a good relation with different countries, right? So while planning such kind of relations, so our officials, those who are involved in it, they will plan in all the aspects कि उस कंट्री के साथ में बिजनेस करने पे हमें फायदा होगा या नहीं होगा, क्या हमारे कंट्री की इंटरडिपेंडेंसी होगी नहीं होगी, ऐसा नहीं हो कि हम उन कंट्री के साथ में रिलेशन मेंटेन करके अपनी डिपेंडेंसी खत्म कर दे. दीज आर ऑल्सो थिंग्स नीड्स टू बी टेकन केयर ना. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल टुडे नाउ ऑलवेज वी हैड सीन देयर वर बॉर्डर इश्यूज विद पाकिस्तान और चाइना. So while planning with Pakistan or China, we need to take care of that also, that they should not get acquired our territories. So these are the basic things that should need while planning a foreign policy. Every sovereign and independent country decides its own foreign policy. Every sovereign and independent country. What do you mean sovereign countries? Sovereign countries are those who can take their own decision. Today, every nation is independent. But many countries have their own restriction. For example, just for an example, if you see the Pakistan can take their own decision? No, because on Pakistan, the China's pressure, America's pressure is much more, right? So they can't take their own decision. But a country like India can take their own decision without asking from any other country. So that's why India is called as a sovereign nation. Every sovereign and independent country decides its own foreign policy. Hence, in this discipline of international politics, which studies the international relation between nation, foreign policy has an important place. That's why foreign policy plays a very important role. Correct? Understood? What is foreign policy? So here we have took a small information about the foreign policy, a basic knowledge on what criteria, what are the basic requirements of foreign policy we go on through. Next is national interest. When we talk about the national interest, so what do you mean by national interest? National interest means love for the nation, right? Every country or every countryman thinks about their own nation. So to give more importance to nation, we plan certain things, and one of that is the foreign policy. So remember, foreign policy is not our goal. Our goal is national interest. Foreign policy is only the way from which we gain our national interest. Clear? So for national interest, we do many things. Like we plan for economy, we plan for a better defense system, because we always want to protect our nation. So our main aim, our main goal is national interest. Understood? We have briefly understood what foreign policy means. So in short, we understood what is foreign policy. Now take a look what is national interest. National interest and foreign policy are closely connected to each other. Right? National interest and foreign policy are closely connected to each other. National interest is fostered through foreign policy. What is fostered? Fostered means given more importance. Right? If you prepare a better foreign policy, then our national interest simply grow better. So they are interrelated. दोनों आपस में जुड़े हुए हैं. आप जितना अच्छा फॉरेन पॉलिसी प्रिपेयर करोगे, प्लान करोगे, आपकी कंट्री को उतना ज़्यादा फायदा होगा और आपकी कंट्री उतना ज़्यादा डेवलप होगी. सो फॉरेन पॉलिसी शुड बी प्लान इन सच अ वे दैट इट गिव्स इम्पोर्टेंट टू आवर ओन कंट्री. ओके? Therefore, before studying foreign policy further, we need to understand the meaning and significance of national interest. So, before learning more about the foreign policy, let's take knowledge of it, national interest, its meaning and significance. हमने foreign policy के meaning और significance देखे. What does it mean as significance? Significance means importance. So, उसी तरह से हम लोग national interest के भी थोड़े meaning और significance को समझते हैं. National interest implies the mean through which the independence and sovereignty of our country can be safeguarded. What is safeguarded? Protected. Right? National interest also includes efforts to achieve our economic development and also to take steps toward increasing our national power. And while functioning, we need to also take care that our nation's income or our economic development should also get increased. When decisions are taken after giving a careful thought to what is beneficial and good for our country, we say that we are nurturing our national interest. What is nurturing? Nurturing means taking care. When we say we are preparing a better foreign policy, it means we are taking care of our national interest. Okay? In this sense, the following factors are included in the national interest of any country. So if we go on these points, then two important things are very much important for any nation's growth or to support the national interest. First is defense and second is economic development. ये दो चीज तो बेसिक है जो करना ही है. एक डिफेंस अपने कंट्री की प्रोटेक्शन और दूसरा इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट अपने कंट्री की ग्रोथ. डिफेंस, that is the protection of our country's independence. It is very much important. Sovereignty and integrity is the highest national interest. We know the meaning of sovereignty. Sovereignty means a kind of independency without any pressure. Integrity means unity. So this should be protected, right? Then only we can take our own decision. Next is economic development. It is very much important. Economic development is also an important national interest. An economically weak nation will not be able to maintain its independence. It is very true. A country which is not economically well settled or economically well established, will they able to take their own decision? No, because they have pressure from multiple countries. So they can't able to take their own decision. So countries should be economically strong to take their own decision. And moreover, the country which is economically strong, they can invest in many projects, they can build infrastructure, even they have a better defense system also, right? पैसे की बहुत जरूरत है ना ये सब चीजों में. Hence, economic development is understood to be an important national interest next only to defense. So defense के बाद अगर कोई चीज का इंपॉर्टेंस है तो वो क्या है? इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट, राइट? अंडरस्टूड द टू थिंग्स, डिफेंस एंड इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. नेक्स्ट इज नेशनल इंटरेस्ट एंड फॉरेन पॉलिसी. हाउ नेशनल इंटरेस्ट एंड फॉरेन पॉलिसी आर इंटररिलेटेड विद ईच अदर. फॉरेन पॉलिसी इज ड्रॉन अप टू फॉस्टर. व्हाट आर फॉस्टर? फॉस्टर मीन्स गिविंग मोर इंपॉर्टेंस. हम फॉरेन पॉलिसी क्यों करते हैं? हम फॉरेन पॉलिसी इसलिए करते हैं कि एक अच्छे फॉरेन पॉलिसी से हमारे कंट्री का एक अच्छा सपोर्ट होगा, अच्छा डेवलपमेंट होगा. तो फॉरेन पॉलिसी गिव्स फॉस्टर टू द नेशनल इंटरेस्ट. फॉरेन पॉलिसी इज ड्रॉन अप टू फॉस्टर द नेशनल इंटरेस्ट ऑफ डिफेंस एंड इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट. National interest is considered to be the goal and foreign policy is considered to be the means to achieve it. So, national interest is our goal and foreign policy is the way from which we will achieve it. Goals of nation change with changes in condition and time. And simple, as time passes, the condition, the demands of the country begins change. So in this way, we need to change our foreign policy also. इंडिपेंडेंस के टाइम पे हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी कुछ और थी, आज हमारी फॉरेन पॉलिसी कुछ और है, क्योंकि हमारे कंट्री कंडीशन उस समय कुछ और थी और आज हमारे कंट्री कंडीशन कुछ और है. गोल्स ऑफ नेशन चेंज विद चेंजेस इन कंडीशन एंड टाइम. अकॉर्डिंगली नेशनल इंटरेस्ट ऑल्सो चेंजेस एंड द सेम वे नेशनल इंटरेस्ट ऑल्सो चेंजेस. These changes are reflected in the foreign policy and these changes are reflected in foreign policy. Therefore foreign policy is always dynamic. और ये जो change होता है वो foreign policy दिखता है. That's why we call our foreign policy as dynamic. What is dynamic? Dynamic means which keeps on changing. जो हमेशा change होता रहता है. Remember हमने 8th में पढ़ा था कि हमारा इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन क्या है? इट्स अ डायनेमिक. डायनेमिक क्यों? क्योंकि चेंज होता रहता है ना. सो इन दिस वे फॉरेन पॉलिसी में भी चेंजेस होते रहते हैं. इवन यू हैव सीन इन मैनी लॉज ऑल्सो, बहुत सारे लॉ भी चेंज होते रहते हैं क्योंकि उसकी जरूरत पड़ती है. अंडरस्टूड? ओके. और नेक्स्ट टॉपिक इज फैक्टर्स इन्फ्लुएंसिंग फॉरेन पॉलिसी. What are factors? Reasons. Influencing means affecting. तो फॉरेन पॉलिसी जो हम कंट्री के लेवल पे प्लान करते हैं तो बहुत सारी चीजें होंगी ना जो उसको असर करती होंगी, इफेक्ट करती होंगी. हमें भी प्लानिंग उसी हिसाब से करना होता है. ओके, सो देयर आर सो मेनी फैक्टर्स, but in this topic we will discuss about the 5 important factors. What are these 5 important factors? First, geographical location. That is very much important. किसी भी कंट्री के साथ में कोई रिलेशन मेंटेन करने से पहले उस कंट्री का जोग्राफिकल लोकेशन, उस कंट्री का फिजिकल फीचर, ये सब बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. हम नहीं चाहेंगे ना ऐसे कंट्री के साथ में हम रिलेशन बनाएं जो ऑलरेडी खुद लॉस में है. हाँ, कोई लॉस में हम उसको सपोर्ट करेंगे, बट वो लॉस से ऊपर तो आना चाहिए. हमें पता है कि वो लॉस में ही रहेगा तो हम उसको सपोर्ट करेंगे? नहीं करेंगे. इवन यू कैन टेक एग्जांपल ऑफ पाकिस्तान. मैनी कंट्रीज सपोर्टेड पाकिस्तान, बट नाउ नन ऑफ द कंट्री सपोर्टिंग पाकिस्तान. उसका जोग्राफिकल इशू नहीं है, वहां पे पॉलिटिकल इशू है. वहां पे कंट्री में ग्रोथ नहीं है, डेवलपमेंट नहीं है, तो कोई कंट्री उसको लोन भी प्रोवाइड नहीं करेगी. करेक्ट? सो देयर आर मेनी थिंग्स. Geographical location, political system. Political system also play a very important role. You can see the example of India. Now India plays a very important role in the global platform. All over world, globally, India has a status. So all of the countries of the world are trying to give support to India. Maybe the infrastructure, maybe the trade, business, economy, and even many countries always ready to support the India in the terms of war also. This plays an important role in our political system. Economy. Economy is the most important thing. पैसा है तो सब आपको सपोर्ट करेंगे. Right? We all agree that. Money needed for everything. For a good relation, for good foreign policy, for defense system, better investment, better infrastructure, we need a good money. National leadership. It is also very much important. Our country's leadership or any country's leadership is very much important. And next is administrative factor. What is administrative factor? Administrative factor means management. Administrative factor means management. Okay? Chalo, let's begin the first. Foreign policy decides what kind of relation to have with which country in the international system. So from foreign policy we plan how we will relate with different countries in international system. ये हमारी अपनी मर्जी होती है, हम अपने हिसाब से प्लान करते हैं. Foreign policy decides what kind of relation to have with which country in international system. But several factors affect foreign policy while it is being decided. But बहुत सारे factors होते हैं ना foreign policy decide करते वक्त. First, geographical location. You must have seen the globe or map of the world. Globe no देखा है आपने? globe एक spherical surface में होता है, map होता है, जो हमारे कभी कभी स्कूल में हम देखते हैं, जोग्राफिकल लैब में होते हैं या किसी ऑफिस के टेबल पे होते हैं, हमारे घर में भी होते हैं नॉर्मली ग्लोब. तो ग्लोब क्या होता है? इट्स आइडेंटिकल लाइक द वर्ल्ड और अवर अर्थ. राइट? तो आपने ग्लोब में या वर्ल्ड मैप में देखा होगा अलग अलग कंट्री अलग जगह लोकेट करती है. कोई कंट्री माउंटेनियस एरिया है, कोई स्नो कवर्ड है, कोई सी शोर के पास में है, कोई कंट्री जो है वो आइलैंड है. तो सबका अपना अपना एक जोग्राफिकल फीचर होता है, जोग्राफिकल लोकेशन होता है. You must have seen the globe or map of the world. You can see the geographical location of any nation from that. Some countries are far away from other countries. Like Russia is nearby India, but America is so far away. But we have a good relation with America. India, China, we are sharing the borders with those countries, but we don't have good relation, right? Some countries are far away from each other. While there are several neighboring countries around some country, there are so many neighboring countries also. Some nation have a long coastline. Some nation have a long coastline. What is a coastline? Seashore. Coastline मतलब seashore. जैसे India. India has a huge coastline starting from Gujarat to Odisha. You have seen a long belt of seashore. अब इंडिया का ये फायदा भी है बिकॉज ट्रेड ट्रांसपोर्टेशन ईजी हो जाते हैं, अलग अलग कंट्री से इंडिया इजिली कनेक्ट हो जाता है बाई वाटरवेज ऑल्सो, फिशिंग के लिए हमारे लिए बेटर है. सो दिस थिंग प्ले वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल. Some nations have a long coastline while some have plenty of mineral wealth. Many countries have a good mineral wealth. In some countries the size matters, population, topography. What is topography? Topography means physical features. जैसे कहीं पे माउंटेनियर्स हैं, कहीं पे फॉरेस्ट हैं, दिस वे. कोस्टलाइन, समंदर किनारा, availability of natural resources, all these factors needs to be considered while deciding the foreign policy of any country. So these things should be taken care while preparing for the foreign policy of any country. Next, political system. Political system is very much important. In a democratic political system, the nation's parliament plays a major role in evolving foreign policy. Right? So for any country, while planning for a foreign policy, the nation's parliament or nation's government plays a very important role. Like in our country, our authorities or the leaders who are involved in this process, they take a proper care of it. When different aspects come up for discussion in parliament, the opposition parties try to regulate the foreign policy by raising questions about the same. Federal political system have to take into account the inclination of the constituent states while shaping foreign policy. Because the affairs in neighboring nations affect constituent states, for example, events in Sri Lanka may affect Tamil Nadu and those in Bangladesh may affect West Bengal and the Northeast Indian states. Right? The relation which we made with our neighboring countries that also affect our states also. For example, we know West Bengal is sharing the borders with the Bangladesh. So if you have a good relation with Bangladesh, then we have a better environment in West Bengal. Same we see the issues we faced in the Northeast India. Those are most sharing the different countries. So in this way, we need to have a good relation with our neighboring countries. Economy. Why economy is important? In modern times, the economic condition of any country has acquired great importance in deciding foreign policy. So in modern times, economy has a great importance while deciding for the foreign policy. Right? We always listen na, paisa bolta hai. What does it mean? Those who have money, people will listen to them. Like America, because they are well established, they are considered as global leader. Right? Many countries na, if they are economically well settled, then all others also give support to them. As a result, the economy impacts foreign policy in two ways. So, economy always impact foreign policy. First, foreign policy is shaped by the need of established relation with other countries. Right? Simply, if you are well established in economic terms, then you have proper planning. Maybe the export import, export import. The things when we send to other countries is called export. When we take things from different countries called import. Import, export, participation in world trade, all aimed at strengthening the economy of the country. So these all strengthen the economy of the country. In today's world, the issues of economic security are as important as national security. In today's world, economic security is as well as important as national security. If we want to protect our country, then you need to also keep safe our economy. Right? How a country will develop when they don't have any economic development? We already learnt about the economic development, right, in history. Countries having a strong economy are less dependent on others. Very true. Countries, those who have a good economy, they are less dependent on other. They don't take help from other countries and they can have an independent foreign policy as well. So directly, economy will have impact on foreign policy. And the country, those who have a good economy, they plan their own foreign policy. किसी से पूछने क्यों जाएंगे, किसी पे डिपेंडेंट क्यों रहेंगे? Because they have sufficient money, sufficient planning. Next is national leadership. It is very much important, right? The country's leader play a very important role in it. The president, the prime minister, the foreign minister, the defense minister, the finance minister, and the home minister. So they are the responsible person for creating a better development in any country. The prime minister, defense minister, president, home minister, right? The minister of external affairs have a role in deciding foreign policy. They play a very important role in deciding foreign policy. The persons holding this position, the person who have this power position, try to maintain the continuity in foreign policy and to improve upon it. And they always try to maintain a continuity and always try to improve it, right? To make a better foreign policy, better relation. For example, during the time of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, contributed the policy of non-alignment. Remember the non-alignment we learned in first chapter. So at that time, non-alignment movement got big support from different countries also, and they countries join hands with India. Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee contributed to great deal to improving Sino-Indian relation, and even the Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he also tried to build a good relation with the China, the Indo-Chinese relations. Next is administrative factor. What is administrative management? Ministry of External Affairs. Ministry of External Affairs means the foreign ministers. The ministers. We know there is we have a team. We learned in 8th now. We have a team. They are called as council of ministers. Council of ministers. So these ministers have the responsibility of different departments. The Ministry of External Affairs means the foreign minister. Those who have a responsibility of the foreign relations. Foreign secretary, embassies in different countries. What are embassies? What are the embassies? Embassies means government offices in different countries which collaborates with the different countries, people or the officials. For example, if you remember that movie Bajrangi Bhaijaan, when the Salman Khan, he wants to drop that kid to Pakistan, he went to the embassy. He didn't went to the Pakistan. He went to the Pakistan embassy. What does it mean? That every nation which we have a foreign policy, they have their embassy in our country. In the same way, our country embassies also there in other countries. Understood? Confusion है? Simple. जिस कंट्री से हम रिलेशन मेंटेन करते हैं, हर एक कंट्री के एम्बेसी हमारे कंट्री में होते हैं और हर एक कंट्री में हमारे एम्बेसी होते हैं. इसका फ़ायदा क्या होता है? हमारा जो मैनेजमेंट वर्क है वो बहुत ही बेहतर हो जाता है. ओके. द डिप्लोमेटिक ऑफिसर्स. व्हाट आर डिप्लोमेटिक ऑफिसर्स? Diplomatic officers means government officials. They are appointed to take certain decision. They have a responsibility to take the decision. Prime Minister तो सब जगह जाएंगे नहीं ना, President तो सब जगह जाएंगे नहीं ना, तो ये कुछ officials होते हैं जिनके पास authorities होती हैं meetings attend करने के लिए, decisions लेने के लिए. They are also our representative. Ministry of External Affairs, Foreign Secretary, embassies in different countries, diplomatic officers, etc. are the administrative factors involved in creating foreign policies. Even though the final decision about foreign policy are taken by the Prime Minister and the Minister for External Affairs, so भले जो decision है foreign policy का वो कौन लेता है? Minister of External Affairs, right? And the Prime Ministers. But the officers take a research or they study on the foreign policy of different countries also, their different trades, their different business, so that we can build a proper foreign policy. Even though means bhale the final decisions about foreign policy are taken by the Prime Minister and the Minister of External Affairs, the administrative machinery helps to arrive at that decision. The administrative officers, the officers who are appointed for such function, the administrative officers collect information needed to shape the foreign policy, analyze it. What do analyze? Research on it and give appropriate advice. Appropriate is proper. advice based on it. The National Security Advisor also complete this task. Even the National Security Advisor, we know National Security Advisor जिनको नेशन के सिक्योरिटी का रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है, so they also give information about this, and basis on that the officials or the government plan for a foreign policy. Understood what is foreign policy? What are the important factors on the foreign policy? Clear everyone? Good. Now take a look on India's foreign policy. On what basis India had made their own foreign policy? After taking this preliminary information, what is preliminary information? Basic information. We had took the basic information about the foreign policy. We had now taken the common foreign policy. Now we will learn about the India's foreign policy. After taking this preliminary information about foreign policy, we shall now get to know more about India's foreign policy. Now we will look more about the India's foreign policy. India got independence in 1947, and from then onwards we started shaping our foreign policy independent. So after the independence, we made our foreign policy independently. What does mean? We didn't took help from other country, or we are not dependent upon other country to plan our foreign policy. Right? It is very much important. The directive principles of state policy have laid down guidelines about how to shape foreign policy. So as we know, there are so many different committees has been set up after the independence. So these directive principles has laid down the condition on what basis we will set our foreign policy. And we all know everything, or even today in our country, has been based on the constitution. So there are different articles in constitution. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में बहुत सारे आर्टिकल्स हैं जो अलग अलग पॉइंट्स हैं. तो आर्टिकल नंबर 51 गिव्स इंस्ट्रक्शन अबाउट अवर फॉरेन पॉलिसी. तो आर्टिकल नंबर जो 51 जो मेंशन है हमारे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में, उसी के बेसिस पे हम लोग ने अपने फॉरेन पॉलिसी को बनाया है, और वही बेसिस पे हम फॉरेन पॉलिसी को फॉलो करते हैं. यहां पे दिया हुआ है आर्टिकल 51, यहां पे दिया है, हम डिस्कस करेंगे अभी इसको. आर्टिकल 51 और नेक्स्ट पेज. Article 51 among the directive principles of state policy lay down the broad framework for foreign policy. What a framework? Structure. Broad means huge. According to it, India should give priority to safeguard international peace and security. On that basis, our responsibility to give safeguard means protect to our international peace and security, and resolve our international problems and disputes by peaceful means. And on the basis of these instructions or guidelines means instruction, so we need to solve our problems in a peaceful manner, right? In a discussions or negotiations way. The objective, what is objective? Aim, goal. The objective of our foreign policy should be to maintain friendly relation. The objective of our foreign policy is to maintain a friendly relation with other nation and respect international law. And it is very much important to respect the international law. If we want to make a foreign relation with any other country, we need to keep respect to other country also. The objective, again read it, it is very much important. The objective of our foreign policy, India's foreign policy, should be to maintain friendly relation with other nation and respect international law. India's foreign policy till now has been developed in this framework, and India's foreign policy till now been developed in this framework, और इसी framework के हिसाब से इंडिया की foreign policy function करती है. Understood? Clear the India's foreign policy, what is the world's foreign policy, and what are the important points of the foreign policy. So we learned that foreign policy is very important for any nation for their growth, development, and the functions of any country. Okay, clear? Foreign policy